Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Morning Coffee. Cheers. My name is Dr. Randon Patterson, and I'll be your host today. And the first thing that we are going to be discussing is why is male fertility declining? Now, I don't think this is actually a very difficult question to answer. I think that most people are fully aware of why this is happening, but I have to be another voice trying to sound the alarm bells that this is way more serious than anyone's giving it credit for. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about, this is a study from 2017, and when they did these studies, they had already seen that sperm counts had declined more than 50% since 1973. And they have continued to decline, and some estimates in certain areas are as high as 70-80% decline. And some studies, as this one, predict that sperm count will be zero in the year 2045. Now, could it ever be zero? No, because these people are being measured in Western countries, and most of them are probably in cities, and this is going to bias some of the results. However, there is a drastic reduction in sperm count, which is going to lead to a rapid decline in population numbers and a high degree of human sadness as couples try to have children and cannot. It's happening because our food supply is completely poisonous. Your canola oil and your safflower oil, these are poisonous substances. They were originally developed as machine oils and yet have now found their way into the human diet. God knows how many additives we have these days for preservation of food. If you have food and it doesn't spoil, that's not food. It's really as simple as we package everything in plastic, it gets phthalates, we spray all of our fields with Roundup, it gets glyophosphates, we add tastants and we add flavorants to everything. Most of these flavorants are untested by the FDA as to whether they're really healthy or not. We'll get into the FDA potentially in a second. We also have pollution of the oceans, microplastics in everything. We have the air pollution in our cities causing rampant asthma amongst all populations that live in the city, but in particular, the populations that are poor and have to live next to highways and busy streets. And I could go on and on and on for all the reasons that sperm count is declining. But the biggest factor is the food. Until we as Westerners decide that food is a priority and healthy food is a priority, this trend is not going to change. Now, is that going to cause the world to completely depopulate? No, because there are still plenty parts of the world where processed foods aren't even available. And guess what? Those people, for the most part, if not in their entirety, don't have cancer, don't have tooth disease, gum disease, all of these things that are just completely common in Western society. So those populations will continue to expand, but indeed the wealthy Western nations and their population will continue to decrease unless this is taken seriously. I actually don't even know whether or not this can be turned around truly because of the chemicals that we have entered into our environment to keep this monocropping agriculture system afloat, where most of what's grown is corn and soybeans, neither of which are particularly healthy. Monocropping was really the beginning of the use of these pesticides, and now It's been used for so long that it's just a part of almost every food stuff that you buy that has any level of processing. Every bread, every cereal, uh, things that people wouldn't even think it would be in, like processed meats. Yes, still could have glyphosate because they use uh, wheat thickeners and things like this in their recipe. So there's pesticides everywhere. There's microplastics everywhere. On top of Mount Everest, there are microplastics uh, all through the oceans, in all the fish that we eat. It's uh, the average plastic that a Westerner consumes these days is roughly the equivalent of a credit card a month. Imagine if you had to cut up a credit card and eat it every month. I don't think you would like it. Yet, this is the amount of plastic that's entering your body on the regular in a Western diet. How we can turn this around? Well, unfortunately, it's really difficult because the only way to avoid these things is to eat, for the most part, whole foods, to go organic if you can, but if it's USDA organic, who knows if that's even really organic, to grow your own food. Most of the things that can uh, allow a person to start eating a healthy diet that's not contaminated with poison are actually economically out of the reach of half of the US population. More than half of the US population, it's like 70% now, lives paycheck to paycheck. And granted, now some of these people living paycheck to paycheck are making $250,000 a year, but they're also paying $5,000 a month in rent. So, uh, for most people, it's very difficult to to abide by any type of a food standard that's going to be healthy. If you don't have land, you can't easily grow enough food to feed yourself. And even if you do have land and you don't live in the South, uh, you're not growing anything for 4 or 5, 6 months a year. So even then, it's not an option. And this is a real problem. I think that one thing that we can do is we have to start making this a part of the discussions that are had in politics. Unless we, the people, start making a point that this is a problem and that we are poisoning our own society, nothing's going to change. You can say, well, we should be more concerned about, the environment and da 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 da. This is the environment. We have to reach out to the people that are running this country and make it a real point. We cannot continue to do the same thing or we're going to keep getting the same result. Uh, this is not just about the environment. It is, but specifically about our food environment. We are subsidizing the things that are killing us. Corn oil is killing people, yet we, the people, pay to subsidize it. Soybeans are killing our people and making our men into women because they're so high in estrogen. Yet they're a cheap foodstuff and they're killing our population. Yet we subsidize it. We, the people that are being poisoned by it, are also subsidizing it. And these are the things that need to come out. We need to spend the time with these political leaders to show them that there will be no country unless we take this very, very seriously. This is sounding the alarm bell. I am not alone. There are lots of people saying the same things, but there can never be enough voices. What's even more insidious, and probably shouldn't be a surprise, is that some of these problems could be fixed at this point in the agricultural industry, and they have no interest in doing it. Now, there are a number of reasons for this. One is that Big Pharma is also Big Ag. Bayer is who owns Monsanto, who produces glyphosate. Uh, Big Pharma is always looking for the next avenue to add one more additive to the uh, way farms are run and grown so that they can continue to make more money. The uh, GMO practices in our food. That one is mind boggling to me because as a molecular biologist, I'm well aware, and people should be well aware, that changing genes in an organism can have profound effects that cannot be easily measured. Now, just because you add a gene that protects it from drought or uh, protects it from a certain insect, that doesn't mean that that gene won't have a negative effect on the people consuming that food. Oh, well, it's just a protein, it'll get denatured. We don't know. And there's no testing that really goes on. Yet, GMOs are just a natural part of the food chain today. There are better ways to produce many of the crops that we grow, uh, in particular fruit crops and leaf crops, and that would be vertical farming and hydroponics in general. Uh, Hydroponics, oh, they waste water. No, they're actually save water. They use 90% less water than typical fields. Well, they're hard to maintain and you have to have a high level of technical knowledge. Well, if we hadn't destroyed the planet, if we hadn't destroyed all of the topsoil in this country, if we hadn't monocropped everything, perhaps this wouldn't be a problem. But now here we are, and we need solutions to fix the problem. Tall grains and things like this, well, yes, you can't do those with hydroponics, and they require soil and they require big equipment, which is another industry that wants to keep things just the way it is so they can keep selling their $1 million machines. But it doesn't have to be that way. Uh, there are alternatives, and we should actually be putting money from our government into uh, examining these alternatives and figuring out what really is the best way in 2023 to farm without chemicals, without additives to the soil, without. How do we create better topsoil? These are things that can be answered in 2023. I really feel like unless people start standing up for themselves, which is going to be continuous throughout everything I talk about, but unless we start standing up for ourselves, this is going to continue, and we're going to continue to see people's health decline, which will then, of course, require more drugs from the pharmaceutical companies. We're going to see fertility decline that's going to cost people $100,000 to go to a fertility clinic to have a child. Uh, this is all real and it's really happening. I hope that anybody who's taking the time to listen to this does what they can to at least protect yourself. Eat more fruits and vegetables. Go to the farmer's market when you can. Buy beef that's raised by your local farmer. Yeah, it might cost a little more, but guess what? You're getting a better product. You're getting less of the toxins that pollute the mainstream food system. So, moving on, uh, the next thing I want to talk about today is RFK Jr. Now, I am already a huge supporter of RFK Jr. I love the things he's saying. He's a Bitcoiner. He wants to get us out of these crazy wars. He wants to unite the right and the left and the independence, and these are all messages that I agree with. Part of why I'm doing this podcast at all is also to help bridge the divide that has been developed in this country and around the world between political ideologies. No, we're just all humans, and we need to figure out how to live on this planet together and for everybody to be able to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'm a big RFK Jr. supporter, but I did see one thing uh, by Sabby Sabs, and I just want to play this little clip and discuss it. And it's about RFK removing a tweet.
RFK Jr. decided to come out in support of Roger Waters, and he tweeted this. And I want you to see what he said here. Roger, you are the global hero Orwell had in mind when he said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. The high priests of the totalitarian orthodoxies are trying to silence you with censorship, gaslighting, and defamation. Please keep speaking truth to power. Now, this tweet received over 1 million views. It had over 7,000 likes. But there's just one problem. He decided to delete it. Primo Radical was able to get the screenshot and said RFK Jr. deleted this tweet in support of Roger Waters. He did respond again, and I'm going to show you what the new response is. We can get into all that. But I got to say something here. Who tapped Bobby on the shoulder and told him to delete this tweet?
Now, when I first saw this, I was kind of upset because I'm a big supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at this point. And I was like, why? Why would he delete this tweet? And did he have a good reason for it? So let's just move forward to his response. And in his response, he says, in my remarks about Roger Waters, I was referring to his dissent on COVID and the war in Ukraine. I've only recently learned about some of his other views, which I do not share. I support Israel's right to exist within secure borders, and I also support the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. Now, when I read this, I also remembered that I thought I had heard some kind of off-color remarks from Roger Waters somewhere. And so then I went back and listened to his Joe Rogan podcast, and I went and listened to pretty much every podcast he's been on since 2017, and realized that no, I couldn't find anything to point out actually that was crazy. And to break down the bottom part of this tweet, I support Israel's right to exist within secure borders, and I also support the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. Now, you could critique this till the cows come home, but the way most people are going to interpret this is, especially if you want to interpret it this way, is that he supports Israel and he doesn't really support the Palestinian people because he only supports their legitimate aspirations. Now, you're running a campaign, you're trying to bring people together. Clearly, Roger Waters invokes a lot of hatred from people saying that he's an anti-Semite and all of this stuff, which is not true. But this is the rhetoric that's out there. I think that, yes, somebody from Kennedy Jr.'s campaign, asked him to recant his remarks. He thought about it. He probably found something that maybe I didn't find, where Roger Waters said something that's off color and felt that he needed to clarify himself. So I'm definitely still not going to throw him under the bus over these remarks. However, it does raise questions with me because the truth of the Palestinian story and the Israeli story is not told in this country. And there are wrongdoings on both sides, but who's doing the majority of the wrongdoing? Well, you can't tell from here. You can only tell if you're in Israel and in Palestine and you can see it for yourself. I would side with there is illegal occupation in the West Bank, that they do really torture the West Bank citizens with embargoes and shutting off supplies coming in, and these are all things that don't get reported on widely but do happen. It's a really tough one, because should Israel have secure borders? Yes, absolutely. But should they be taking other people's borders? Well, probably not, or just no. It's a tough one. And what I hope is that, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. seems to be the type of person that has no problem upgrading his philosophy, is that as he does more research and as he finds out more about this entire situation, that he continues to evolve how he talks about it. And what that really got me thinking about is, because Robert, he's a Kennedy. Kennedy is dyed in the wool part of the political fabric of this country. And what he could really benefit from is choosing a running mate prior to moving forward in his campaign. And it's like, oh, well, nobody does this and there are problems with it. Well, that may have been true in the last 50, 100 years. But given that Trump was able to run the presidency, I believe that you can only help your cause by choosing a running mate early. It shows that you have conviction, shows that you have strong ideas about how you want to lead and who you want to lead with, and also gives you the opportunity to bring somebody else to help run your campaign and be a mouthpiece that's out there promoting your views and trying to help you win the election. Because he's a dyed-in-the-wool politician that the world accepts, he can afford to choose somebody who's not part of the establishment to be a running mate, and perhaps even somebody that has slightly different views, or even maybe considerably different views than him, so that as a tandem, what we get in the White House with a Kennedy Jr. win would be that you already see there's some type of checks and balances even within the president and the vice president. And then I started thinking about, well, who could that be? And I really racked my brains, and I really only have two suggestions. But, if anybody watches this and wants to leave a comment, would love to hear it. But the first person that I thought of is comedian Dave Smith. Now, it's not that he has the hugest audience, although he has a large audience. It's not that he's a comedian, although that really helps, because he's a great public speaker and is not afraid to be in front of large groups of people. He's not going to lose his shit if he has to talk intelligently in front of large groups. But it's the fact that he's a real libertarian and really carries all the important libertarian values. He's also anti-war. He's also break up the monopolies. He's also, shares a lot of conservative views that we should have protected borders, that we shouldn't be telling people what to do in their own homes. He's anti-woke. For all those reasons, and he has even talked about potentially running under the Mises Party for president, he would be somebody who could legitimately step in, be a part of the Kennedy campaign, and I think he would garner a lot of people's trust because he's not part of the system. He's an outsider to the system and can bring people together across the aisles with his libertarian viewpoints, which many of them are liberal and many of them are actually quite conservative. So He would actually be my personal number one choice, and I hope that he hears this. But the second person that I think would be a great running mate for Kennedy is Killer Mike. And why? Well, Killer Mike made a lot of waves in the Bernie campaign. He's a musician, so he has this creative background, but he's also a big time businessman. So he's used to business dealings and contracts and big businesses and sponsorships and all of this. So he's not like he's a fish out of water when it comes to the economic side of things. Uh, and because of all the work he did for the Bernie campaign, he's very recognizable. Many of the values that the Sanders campaign carried are appearing in the Kennedy campaign. I believe that Mike could bring, once again, both sides of the aisle together and, importantly, bring the independent vote in from all of the previous Sanders supporters who have now abandoned him because he's just a big liar and never had any intention of actually changing anything. It was, in my opinion, one big smokescreen. As a former Bernie supporter, just a big smokescreen to allow the Democratic Party to continue railroading the people into things like, oh, wait, Joe Biden. I think that either of those two could be a very good partner for RFK. The third person that I think could also be great, albeit she's already part of the political establishment, but she stepped out of Congress, is Tulsi Gabbard. And why? Because Tulsi's also anti-war. Tulsi's a veteran. Tulsi's a woman. Tulsi's a woman of color. Tulsi will go on Fox News the same as she would go on a liberal media site if they invited her. She also has real potential to bring people together from both sides of the aisle. While I don't agree with everything that Tulsi says, I certainly like more than I don't. And I think that she would be a very good fit to, because if something, God forbid, happened to Robert F. Kennedy, which, given Kennedy history, who knows, I don't think people would be disappointed with Tulsi as a president, unlike Kamala, where I think that if Joe Biden died tomorrow and Kamala Harris became president, I think that would be the beginning of the end of the country. I really do believe that people would just lose their mind and bad things would start happening. So there's my little take on RFK for today. I really hope that his campaign continues to take off. I hope that he hears things about deleting tweets and putting out tweets that your campaign manager says that you should do. And he listens to that and takes it seriously and realizes that if he continues to do things like this, he will lose credibility, obviously. And he will be viewed as just another politician, just like all the rest of them. And that's something I hope that he can avoid through this process. The last thing I'd like to talk about today is a little bit fun, it's a little bit scary, and that is how NASA lies to the people with the images that they show us. And that there really can't be any other reasons other than there are things that they just don't want us to see. Now, what you're seeing here is a picture of the famous face on Mars, and that's down in the corner. And then they show you another picture of the same thing, and it doesn't look anything like that. Now, the first picture is from Voyager, and the new picture is from the reconnaissance orbiter. And it's like, well, how could they be so different? And me as a scientist, especially since a great majority of the work I did was actually in imaging, in image processing, I was really taken aback, and I thought, well, maybe it really was just the technology, and maybe it really was, uh, just the way that picture was taken, that it was some type of a fluke. But Then I watched this really great show. It's called The Y Files, and they did a whole section on, or a whole show on NASA recoloring images. Now, what you're seeing here is one of these recolored images, and it's what we classically expect to see in a Mars picture. But this has been recolored. This is not what Mars looks like. Because NASA was called out on this recolorization, they've actually started sharing what the real pictures look like, and they actually look like this. So it doesn't look so crazy alien. It doesn't look to be this planet that, is completely lifeless or, never could have sustained life. It actually looks like something you could envision seeing something like this on Earth. What that tells me is that because NASA is funded by the public and they have to share a large majority of the results with the public, that they are really going above and beyond to try and hide things. And it really makes you think, what are they finding on Mars that they don't want us to see? Why didn't we go back to the moon? Is there things that they didn't want us to see? Now, there are huge conspiracy theories on all of this, and I'm not going to get into that today. Maybe I will in another episode. But I think it's important that the people know and that you know that this is occurring regularly. We are regularly being shown images that do not at all represent what is actually been photographed. So, for any of you people that are into these types of things, I highly encourage you to check out this episode on the Y Files, Alien Artifacts on Mars, What NASA Doesn't Want You to Know, and to do your own research, because I think you will find that there probably is a lot more out there than what we're being told. And on that fun note, thanks for joining me for another episode of Morning Coffee, and we'll talk to you next time. If you stayed to the end of the video, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm dedicated to using my lifetime of experiences in the sciences to help everyone have a better understanding of the world we live in. I'm also really trying to live as a creative, and to do that, I need support from the people that enjoy my work. You can check out my Patreon as well, where you can see original music and my digital art. Thanks.